Paul Maynard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I'll try and keep this as tight and brief as I can. But when I saw the woman for Wrexham's name at the top of this debate, I rather suspected that we might dwell a bit upon Ramsay, because I know he has a long track record of campaigning on the issue, and he's quite right to draw attention to the plight of his constituents. I personally try to take a much wider view of disability employment. I've said on many times that I regard Ramsay as but one model, and a model which harks back, I think, to a different era when we saw how disabled people could fit into the workplace. I know people rarely read election manifestos. I always try to make the effort to read my own at least, even if not the opposition's. But one of the proudest moments of my life was to see in the Conservative election manifesto of 2015 a commitment to halve the disability employment gap. A commitment not seen in any other party's manifesto apart from the Conservative Party. And I, for one, am very proud of that fact. I'm as proud of the fact that over the past 2 years, we've got 340,000 more disabled people into employment. I recognise that there will be individuals who will not have benefited from that, and there will always be detailed reasons how things could be done better. I'll happily give way briefly.
I thank the honourable friend for giving way, and I congratulate the honourable member for Wrexham in securing this important debate. It's not just about what has happened in the last 2 years, it's also, I think the honourable friend will reflect on the fact that it's also what is in the current spending review. In the spending review, as I understand it, there is a real terms increase in the access to work budget for disabled people. Well, my old friend will reflect on that for a moment.
I certainly would. I serve with the Shadow Minister on the Work and Pension Select Committee looking at the access to work scheme in quite some detail. I'm sure we had different interpretations of what we heard, because we normally do. But it is a really important project that the government has at its disposal, often described as its best kept secret by Liz Sayce. I happen to believe that there's far more that we could do with access to work. It's one of the few uncapped government benefits, in the sense that there's no artificial cap placed upon the overall amount spent. And I think that's really important that we realise that and understand what more it could be spent on. It isn't just about physical adaptations anymore. The number of people with a mental health condition benefiting from access to work has gone up by 202% since 2010. That's more than a doubling. That, I think, demonstrates a really important point that I want all colleagues on all sides of the House to understand, which is that once upon a time, disability employment was about physical access. It was about the nuts and bolts of equipment and doorways and widths of desks and chairs and so on. Whilst that remains still important, just as important today are issues around mental health. And I don't think that that gets sufficient attention in terms of how we see disability employment. I also hope that members opposite will at least join me in paying tribute to the Minister's own commitment on this issue. He is working tirelessly on pursuing the goal of halving the disability employment gap. The Disability Confident campaign is occupying a great amount of his time, and I know that he is personally very committed to it, and we should welcome that. In the last Parliament, we saw frequent changes in the identity of our disability minister. I sincerely hope on this occasion he stays in his post for the entire Parliament. He may not wish that, but I certainly do, because I think he's doing a superb job. If I could just return briefly, though, to access to work, because one may think that the entire picture is rosy, given what I've been saying, and I recognise it is far from rosy. There are certain groups within the disability community who are really genuinely struggling still to get onto the employment ladder. People with learning difficulties, in particular people with autism. The Honourable Gentleman quoted, I think, the 47.6% figure from the Labour Force survey that I saw in the main cap briefing too. And I know there were some arguments over what the starting point is, but the overall employment gap is 19%. Yet for groups like autism, it is significantly greater than that and much more challenging. If I had one recommendation to the government, it would be that access to work needs also to be available at the pre-employment stage. When people are looking for work, the employer needs to have confidence that access to work will be available. It can't be something they discover after they have made the leap of faith to take the person on. And I think that will be one way, I think, of making access to work really enable a whole new group of people to benefit from it. I'm fortunate enough to chair the all-party parliamentary group of young disabled people, and the Trailblazers Muscular Dystrophy campaign did a short report a few months ago on the right to work, and one of the findings they had was that there was much more support needed at the job-seeking phase of engagement with employment. And it can't all just occur after that decision has been taken to employ someone. Then we have to start solving some of the practical problems. The other point I would make is that there's a wider reason to increase disability employment, not just for the sake of human dignity and the sake of equality, but I'm afraid to say for fiscal reasons too. If we can halve this employment gap, the gain to the Treasury, according to Scope, is somewhere in the region of £12 billion. That is a sizable amount of money and not to be ignored by any chancellor of any political persuasion, in my view. I would also make a plea, going back to my point about access to work. One of the avenues I pursued in the Select Committee inquiry was the similarity between disabled students' allowance and access to work over their ultimate purpose. It's about allowing people to participate in their place of work, be it a college, university, or indeed the real workplace. Yet I still struggle to understand why it's managed by two different government departments, on two different sets of procedures, with two different sets of criteria. Far better to bring the two together, I would suggest, because they're all seeking to achieve the same thing, which is to equip people to function in everyday life. And I would urge the Minister to have a look at that. I think as my final point, if I can then allow myself to move on a little, because there's much more I could say and I want others to be able to contribute, I think it will be that no one should underestimate that the difficulty of halving this gap. It will not be easy. I know policymakers like to use the cliché low-hanging fruit. It's a very disrespectful way to talk about individuals, but there will be those who are closer to the workplace than others, and they will be easy to get in. The trick will come, or the difficulty will come, when those with the much more complex needs, who are more costly to address, where they come into play in terms of meeting this goal. And no one should underestimate the level of courage and ambition and I just think confidence, essentially, that young people need to engage in to try to seek work. When you are a young person in your teens, you're still probably at the family home, you're still probably in the school environment where you've always been. You're, to a certain extent, in a safe environment. It isn't till one gets out there trying to find a job that one really discovers the existence of prejudice against the disabled in society. And it can be quite a shock to many young people. It certainly came as a shock to me. I wasn't expecting to encounter it when making job applications, yet I rapidly ran into it. And I don't consider myself to have a particular severe form of cerebral palsy at all, yet I had certainly encountered it. So when we discuss the issue of disability employment overall, it's worth remembering that we need to encourage young people, that they do not aspire to a lifetime of supported employment. Their families don't aspire to that on their behalf either. They want to partake of full equality in the workplace, and we have to do all we can to make that happen. And it is not easy. It is a very ambitious target, and that I don't doubt. We're making progress now, but there's no guarantee that progress will continue forever and ever. So I thank the Minister for what he's doing so far. I've offered a few what I think are helpful suggestions, and I look forward to hearing what other members have to say.
Yeah.